Yo, what's up, guys? It's Goose from the Wise Wealth Discord. Coming back at you with another watch list. I did change some of the settings for my stream, so hopefully it works out correctly. I also have my AirPods in, so that might be change it a little bit. I just need to check really quick, make sure that I am live, hopefully. Um, but as long as everything's working out fine, hopefully the screen doesn't render as much. That's kind of what I'm trying to get down. Is like when I show the screen, I want it to be a lot more clear. I don't want it to be all blurry and rendering and stuff, just to give you guys better quality setups and stuff like that. So hopefully that's occurring. I won't know until I upload it, unfortunately, but I'm working on getting a little bit better stream. But besides the fact, I hope everyone had a great 3 day weekend, man. We finally got through it. I know everyone's probably a little bit antsy trying to see what NVIDIA earnings is. FOMC, or we got the Fed minutes Wednesday as well. So we'll see what happens on SPY and QQQ. It does start to look like it's getting a little top heavy. Right now we have a lower high. So we'll have to see if it does follow through and make a lower low, but that would be big significance due to this trend line that we've had. So until that's broken, the bulls are still maintain a good control of the market. But as you can see, they haven't quite breached, the previous all-time high, and they got up there and they were denied. So we'll see. It might come down here. As you can see, NQ down 0.36%. You have ES right about 5,000. So they're at pretty good levels in futures right now. We just have to see what's held, what's not. But there's a decent sell-off on Friday due to PPI. Tuesday, the gap down was from CPI. So the two data drops did come in hot, but as you can see, it got bought up pretty quickly. So the bulls still maintain pretty good control of the market. Like I've been saying, is like the second half of February, you start to see some weakness. Usually, February going into March. I'll show you the seasonal chart really quick. So you have something like this where it shows, second half of February, it does create a lower low going into March. But also a thing to remember is that this is an election year. Typically, stocks are a lot stronger during election years, and we are in extreme greed, so that could kind of, start to send us down a little bit if they want to. Uh, we really don't know what's going to happen with NVIDIA earnings, but I do think that's probably going to be one of the biggest catalysts, other than the Fed minutes as well. So we'll have to see. Anything above, 502, 503 is definitely more blue sky territory where there's just no resistance above, so that'll be huge. If it does end up playing out, you would want to see a sell off below like 497, and then maybe we can go test the 490 area. If that's lost, then we might be in bigger trouble than we expect, but we'll see. I don't think anything too drastic right now. I think a good pullback or something like that would be good. The Qs is one that I've been eyeing because it definitely looks a lot more toppy than the SPY. You got a nice little head and shoulders. You got the left shoulder, the head, the right shoulder. And now it's coming back into play is this trend line that's been held since last year. We got one touch, two touch, three touch. I didn't quite put a green thing, but four, five, and now it's coming up to six. So my levels on it would be the previous, resistance that they had right about where it's at right now. So you wanted to see and maintain the 430 level. If it does break through, it could break this trend line as well. So your next point would be 425, this liquidity area. If you lose 425, it can come fill this gap. 420 loses that, then 416 would be the next support. And that would be a decent little pullback. I don't know exactly, from where we're at now. Let's say from the top of this down to 416, that would be a good pullback of 5%. And then maybe we can continue to keep inching higher and keep going. But eventually, you would like to see those things occur. I know I mentioned the divergence that was showing on the 4 hour in the cues, where it's showing, lower lows, lower highs on there, but then it was going up. So we might start actually seeing this play out, but we still need to create that lower low. There's like the bulls, they always get a good start, and then it just ends up being a lower high, and they just keep going higher. And it's like right now, if it doesn't break below the 426 area, it would just be a higher low, and then they can buy it right back up and go create a higher high, above 440. So we'll keep an eye on it. IWM, they have been kind of like in this range, and they broke back out despite the high PPI, high CPI, which is an indicator of, first off, the breadth of the market. There's been a lot of naysayers about how unhealthy the market is due to the concentration in the Mag 7, that's like 70% of the rally that we've seen. So that helps if you can get the IWM going. But another thing is risk on versus risk off. When you start to see things like Bitcoin flying up, you see Ethereum flying up, and then you have IWM, those are risk on assets. That's showing that people are willing to put their money to work on a little bit more riskier assets than, something that would necessarily be considered safe or easy to play like a SPY or like a Q. So when you get into IWM small caps, it's kind of a risk on versus risk off indicator. So watching that is big. And right now it did, break above. It just came right back down. So there's a clear resistance right about here at the 203 level. You can see, one touch, two touch, three touch, and hasn't quite broken it. So anything above 203, then you could start to maybe test the 210 area as next resistance. But IWM definitely does look pretty solid, so we'll have to wait and see. Yields did start to kind of spike up a little bit on some of the news with the high CPI, high PPI. Anything below 4% on any of these major ones, like the 10-year and the 2-year, will be very, very bullish. And when that does happen, I do think that could start to bring in a little bit of liquidity to the housing market. But we'll just have to wait and see. Let's get into some equities. We got Apple, just kind of ranging. Nothing crazy, like I said. It just can't, breach this high. So we have just a little coiling action, nothing too crazy like a channel, more or less. This is the 4 hour, so you'd expect it to bounce right about here at the 180 level every time. We'll see if it does happen. I think I did add the 200. See if yeah, so it's battling with the 200 right around there. So I think it did actually have a close below it, which is never really a good sign. Apple is the baby, so we'll see. Typically, Apple on their 200 is always bought up, so we shall see. See the touch, up, the touch, up. It did lose it, that's when we had the big sell-off in the market, but it didn't really lose it for very long. As you can see, once it came above and tested it, didn't see it for a while. This correction happened, and they got their, little sell-off, but right when it got below the 200, it gets bought up. So it's not at a bad point. It's at a good support. Being below the 200 isn't really necessarily a good thing, but we'll just have to wait and see how it plays out. I haven't really traded Apple in a while, but it's been in this nice little like range. So if we can get above, anywhere above 200, it's just very, very bullish for Apple if we can get up there. Microsoft kind of looking a little toppy. It's not very clean, but you definitely could see a left shoulder ahead and then possibly a right shoulder if it comes back up and doesn't breach the left shoulder's high. It's not very clean or clear right now, but it's just kind of just some slop, just some nice consolidation cooling off the RSI. But they're still maintaining, the all-time highs. It's not like they're touching all-time highs and just getting smoked all the way down. So basing this is good. It's building a nice support, building some volume there at like the 400 level. Anything below 400, I think you start to get pretty bearish, and we'll see if that happens. Nvidia, that's the big player this week that has earnings coming up. Not exactly sure what's expected, but estimate 4.593, revenue 20.39 billion. So we'll see what happens. I'm not really 1,000% sure how it's going to play out just because of how big of the run up has been, and then just kind of the expectations that Nvidia is. I feel like they got to hang it above the moon for them to continue and to justify their stock price. So to me, I don't want to sound too bearish, but it could be like a buy the rumor, sell the news. Is like a lot of this is, buying the rumor that Nvidia is the top dog in chip maker. There's a lot of demand for it. They can't keep up with it. And then if earnings comes out and it's right about in line, it could be like a sell the news event. Is like, okay, we already kind of priced in that they would have, good earnings. So to me, they have to have spectacular earnings to continue the rise in their stock price. But if it comes in line or just even a little bit lower, I do think we can get a significant sell off. And that could definitely lead to the market selling off if NVIDIA does get smoked. So, yeah, like technicals don't really matter when it comes to earnings, but it's obviously got a nice little flag pennant formation going on over here. So we'll see if it just maintains that or what goes on with it. But I wouldn't touch it this week. I would stay away from most chips just because the uncertainty with their earnings. We'll see what happens though, but I do think that could trigger the sell off, but that's just my opinion. I don't know for sure. It could hang it to the moon and have spectacular blowout earnings and continue its meteoric rise, but usually when you go into earnings like that, it 9 times out of 10 is like a sell the news event is when they do post earnings and everyone dumps it. We'll see. Meta still has their earnings base and break. We're just watching these levels right here. If it gets above 486, it peaked its head above and then sold back down. So we'll see. It did show a decent amount of strength most days, but yeah, if it's above 486, I mean 500's in the cards for sure. That'll be a pretty easy feat. Below, obviously, you have a huge gap below. It's not guaranteed to be filled, as you could see with NVIDIA earnings when they had their gap above. Everyone and their mama thought that they were going to come and fill this gap after, and they just kept going. So, same thing could happen with Meta. Just because there's a huge gap below doesn't mean that it's guaranteed to go fill. But if you do see 453 start to get breached, to come back, retest it, and now that's resistance, you could start to see a little downturn, the 440, 420, 400 area on Meta. Tesla, we still are watching it. I think I was looking at Robinhood, their overnight trading, they're down close to 1% or something like that, 1.25%. So they're right around like 197 with 196, which would be right about previous resistance. So as long as they can hold that tomorrow, we'll see. But it looks like they're probably going to break out of this formation that we had. But we still have a price target of filling this gap around 206. So if it can come back, retest this, and then go right back up to 206 and fill that gap, that'll be pretty bullish. And then it's got some other things to work on, but it's starting to definitely show some strength because as you could see, like when I showed you the Qs Friday, we had a decent sell-off. We had like almost a percent day, 0.91 right there. And then when you see Tesla, they actually had a pretty good day. They were just flying up. It was just a quarter percent on Friday, but most of the week was relatively weak. And then you could see they created that right shoulder and pushed it up. So now that we're above the 195, 196 area, you'd like to see that be held as support, and then maybe we can go see 206 and see what happens. Could get sent back down, but they're in a nice little channel. Maybe they do go up and try and test it for like the third or fourth time. Might get smoked, but that would be a nice little bullish action to see Tesla catch up a little bit to some of these names. AMD, we have this beautiful pennant formation. It's still above. I know it had like a little weak sauce, on the breakout, but technically it's still above. If it does come back down, you'd like to see the 171 area held. If it loses it, then you could see it break back down. And as you know, AMD is a chip maker, so be careful trading that as well. I think it's a good sympathy play, if you want to play options but don't want to get killed by theta or IV. You could play AMD instead of NVIDIA. I still don't think it's a good idea because you don't know what NVIDIA is going to happen. It's just kind of a gamble there. So just be careful. Google's still in their channel. They tried to fill that gap completely from earnings and didn't quite get up there. Now it looks like they're going to head lower. 136 would be about support for that. And so I would start looking for calls possibly because you're starting to see the RSI get a little low. So if it does come down there, RSI will be very oversold and it'll be at support. Usually a good place to start buying some longs. Amazon, we got another basin break for their earnings. They have an earning gaps below, as you can see, but it's holding the support: one touch, two touch, three touch, four touch, five touch, six touch. So it's there. Buyers are stepping in whenever it touches 167. Sellers are trying to keep it down, but if it does get above you and actually hold it and not get come back into range, you could start to see the 175, 180 level and hopefully get up to all-time highs eventually, which should be about 190. So nice little base that they got going from earnings. Netflix, they actually broke out of their base that they're building. They had a little downward channel. We posted that in the Discord. It's a pretty good size trade, but I never actually took it. I just kind of missed it, and it kept going up that whole day. That it did break out, but I remember posting it in Discord saying that, oh, Netflix broke out, and then it had its day. And we'll see. It does look really, really bullish, actually. There's not really much that looks bearish about the chart. So breaking out of that was huge. You just got to maintain it. If it does come back down, you would like to see it build support around the 580 level and hold 580. If it falls below 580, it could continue lower at 540. But nothing too crazy. You got Coinbase. They had their earnings. They actually did pretty good as expected. They're just continuing to make higher highs and higher lows. You got a higher high here, higher low, higher high. So really good earnings. It looks like they sold off a little bit. Let me go to the 1 hour, see if they could build a base here and hold this support. If not, it could come, fill this gap right here to the 170 area. But overall, Coinbase has been pretty strong. It found a good support around previous resistance and then went and created a higher high. So those are things that you like to see. DraftKings, they've had a lot of volatility with their earnings and stuff, but they still edge higher. So not really anything worth shorting, I suppose. But definitely in kind of like a pretty steep uptrend right now. So if it gets up into this top area of the channel, and then you have the overbought area as well, you could start to see it pull back maybe to 38, 35 area. Currently at 44, so that's a pretty good buy zone when it came back down to $10. I know Jimmy was mentioning that he was going to be scooping some commons, and since then, I mean, it's almost 4 times in value. It's pretty significant. Boeing, I don't think I really have much for Boeing. Shop, kind of the same thing. Still looking strong. Not anything too crazy, just a big range that's going on. You obviously need to see it above 91 to start making higher highs, but it's a stock that can move pretty quickly depending on, how tech is doing. ARK is still kind of basing out, trying to make a nice little bottoming process. What you would like to see is above $55, and then it can go more. It can go for 60, 70, start to maybe inch its way towards all-time highs. If it does get denied, you don't want to see it below 45 as a bull. You'll get smoked all the way back down to like 37, somewhere around there. But that's about it. Fed minutes Wednesday, and then NVIDIA earnings Wednesday after close. Those will be the two catalysts. We'll see what happens. My guess would be a sell-off, but who knows? Who knows? This market's pretty bullish right now, and if Nvidia hangs it to the moon and does kill earnings, it's just going to continue to rally. We're not going to stop. We're going to continue to keep playing our levels, and we shall see. Hope you guys had a good weekend.